Um,
No, no, I just wanna get right to the good stuff.
all right. Um, so spoilers are about to commence for, I guess, all J.R.R. Tolkien stuff is open
Fair
for
game, yeah.
discussion. I am certainly not well versed in all of it, but we'll get right into it. Hobbit Day. Yay.
Yay, huzzah.
Congratulations. We made it to another Hobbit's Day. Happy birthday, Bilbo and Frodo, which is what the holiday represents,
Mhm.
their birthdays. And we might as well. I know you're big Tolkien head, right? So
Indeed.
what was your introduction? What was your introduction to the world of Tolkien?
Sure. My first introduction to the world of Tolkien was through the books, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I did not read The Hobbit first. Um, so when I was, it was in 8th grade, I remember, and my family I think the only time we've ever done this, we took a trip during Christmas break to like a ski lodge and rented out like a whole lodge for our family. Um, and my dad was like, "Don't bring books. I know you're going to bring books, but I've got a series that I want you to read
Oh.
because I think you're going to like it." Because my dad actually introduced me to a lot of my kind of classic favorites for different things. Like he introduced me to a lot of different book series that he enjoyed, like Terry Brooks, Terry Goodkind, The Lord of the Rings. Obviously, he was the person who gave me the first book in Game of Thrones. So my dad kind of like introduced me to a lot of these different fantasy worlds. Um, but yeah, I remember very specifically that we were on this trip, and my dad gave me these books, and um, by the time the trip was over, I think I'd maybe hit the slopes like twice because I was just so like page turner, page turner, page turner. I was just like sitting on the couch of that ski lodge, just reading, and I was just fascinated by this world.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely loved it. Fell in love like from the first book, and then kind of branched out to go read The Hobbit, like the Silmarillion, a lot of the different tales that Tolkien mostly finished. I think some are finished by his son Christopher, but
Mhm.
mostly his.
So how do you feel that like his work holds up today? The core books and everything. You
Mhm.
feel like there is obviously what age do you say? 8th grade? Okay. So
Yep.
obviously at that point, younger. Do you feel the same way about them today? Have you reread any of them or anything like that?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely have reread the core trilogy, and the Silmarillion is actually one of my favorite books. Um because I weirdly love like the amount of thought and detail he built or he put into building like this entire world with this huge backstory. Like it's just it's so impressive to me the scale to which he built this world. You know what I mean? Like the how many different languages that are all unique. Like he wrote dictionaries for this kind of stuff. Like he wrote histories of like all these different races that are represented in his books, like complete with like songs and tales of their own. Like just like the amount of detail he put into it, I just think is so amazingly impressive. And that's the kind of thing I definitely still think holds up today in terms of thinking of um you know continuity, logical like progression in his world, like everything fits. There's no like weird like, oh, but what if, or why didn't he, explain this? Like no, he thought of it. um and then I think as an adult reading the books, I'm definitely colored a little bit by the fact that I, as a teenager, did not know anything about Tolkien himself. When I first read the books, so I just sort of like read them very straightforward as a fantasy epic, and then as an adult, learned a little bit more about his life and his service in World War I. And now it's hard for me to not see the books through a lens of like this is a man clearly dealing with his time in the service and a little bit of PTS or a lot of PTSD. I mean, kind of it's not quite apparent like how much
Sure.
mental health issues he had, but clearly some are there.
Mhm. Well, and really, as you were mentioning before, I think that's the groundbreaking thing. That's the
Mhm.
legacy Tolkien is that world building. Everything
Yeah.
else, I mean, I talk a lot about Dungeons and Dragons, and the he just created the fundamental building blocks of everything that we imagine as a high fantasy kind of world,
Mhm.
that spans everything. Like it was I think that I mean, obviously, it took a lot of things, I suppose, from older myths and things, but I think that pre Star Wars or something, it's his detailed work that really inspired a generation to like imagine like
Mhm.
probably no one in the modern world had before. And it
Yes.
became because of that clear depth of everything. Like you say, there's no need to write all the songs and the dictionaries you don't have to come up with all those languages, but he did, and it makes it so real.
Mhm.
Um, and now that's the envy of every creator, every dungeon master, every fantasy or science fiction novelist that wants to make their own sprawling epic. Like you have a lot to live up to. Like,
Absolutely.
it's really not his like writing prowess, it's
Mhm.
it's his his way with his dedication to creating an entirely new world.
Mhm.
Um so
Which
that's
is
what I find most amazing.
yeah, I agree. It's such a beautiful contradiction that he's creating a new world, but he's such an adept historian. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Like he's so it's his ability to create a history that brings a whole new world to life. And it's such like a um I don't know how to describe it even as I'm thinking about it right now. But yeah, it's such a wonderful thing to like think that your ability to write the past can build a future.
mhm. I wonder, um how we really went about it all as well. I've listened to some things like I always figure when you're planning out a trilogy or something like that, that's what you do. You kind of
Mhm.
plan it out. And then I was listening to a thing earlier that's saying as a writer, the last thing you want to do is plan something out.
Mhm.
You want to write and it takes you where you need to go.
Right.
Um and when I'm doing like D&D writing, then things start compiling, but you start getting to these moments where you're like, okay, what's the bigger picture here? Where are
Mhm.
the branching things that need to happen? Like, I can't just like keep making stuff up and not have, work out resolutions and like have
Right.
things have meaning and whatever. So I just would be interested in knowing more about how the process of his world building really came to be. Was it literally
Mhm.
just like building block, and it just kind of expands? And
Mhm.
then eventually it's edited to, or is it just like, I don't know, the search of, do you have any insight into like the process that he came to
Yeah,
have in creating this?
a bit. I know that his process was a combination of creating the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the essence of Middle Earth actually in the trenches. I mean, he had plenty of time in World War One. I mean, if you don't, if any listeners don't know a ton about World War One, it's the trench warfare war. So you had a lot of time in your side's like position to just sit there, and sometimes things happened, and then sometimes weeks passed and almost nothing happened. And it was kind of like during these times that he started thinking about um his the books that he wanted to write, and like kind of telling the story of this fellowship of companions the way that he was much a companion of fellows with his fellow soldiers. So he had started that kind of thinking while in the trenches. Um, and that's how the original trilogy came to be. And then I know that um, once he left active duty, he was pretty sick, so he spent a lot of the end of the war in a hospital bed and kind of like again had time to like build on his thoughts already. And then in his later years after the war, it was kind of a little bit of his therapeutic process to go back and create so much of this like history, like still spending time in this world and dealing with some of the things that had happened to him that way. So both and um I think he definitely had like a clear overall story he wanted to tell with Lord of the Rings. And then I think some of the other books and histories and tales are more meanderings, and just kind of revisitings and further world building, that he had thought of, but maybe hadn't thought of as deeply initially.
Right. Yep. Let's see. What else should we talk about here? We obviously have to talk about the movies.
Yes.
Um,
I didn't
so
watch all of
I
them
was,
for nothing.
yeah, I was just thinking of like dates and stuff here.
Hmm.
It the the aughts, I guess, the early 2000s, really something for movies.
Hmm.
I think that the time that, I don't know if we're in the tail end of it now or if we're still in the middle of it, whatever, the golden age of television. I think that our last like amazing moments of summer blockbusters that were like worth something, um, was that early 2000s period.
Hmm. Right.
Um, because it kind of got kicked off with The Matrix in 99. So as our precursor. So then we were
Hmm.
followed up by 2 more Matrix movies. We
Hmm.
had the Spider-Man
Oh
trilogy.
my
We
god,
had
yes.
the X-Men movies. We
Mhm.
had, I think the Pirates movies too.
Yes, we did. We
Um,
absolutely did. Because I definitely
it's
went to
just
the midnight showings of those bad boys.
yeah, 2003, the first
Mhm.
Pirates. So, like, what a lineup. You
Uh-huh.
know, Lord of the Rings, Matrix trilogy, Spider-Man, X-Men, Pirates, so it's superhero movies before, they're like the expected norm for
Marvel.
everything,
Before Marvel.
yeah. Yep. The fantasy epic, the sci-fi like mind games thing, and then the crazy drunken pirate. Like, you know,
Some
how do you
action
go wrong with that?
adventure, yeah.
Yeah, and like the kind of the crown jewel of all that, honestly, was the Lord of the Rings. Like those were the
Mhm.
ones to take seriously.
Yeah.
Um,
They were
and
funny, but
we
they
had
were, like,
them,
serious too.
hmm and we had them yearly. Oh, okay,
Mhm.
Batman Begins as well, 2005.
Yes.
So pretty incredible. Um, but yeah, every holiday you could look forward to a Lord of the Rings movie.
Mhm.
And it was kind of another groundbreaking thing was not only the obviously we get what Tolkien has given us in terms of a masterclass in world building, but then we have the films that are kind of a masterclass of filmmaking for something so grand and epic.
Yeah, I was gonna say the
It's
scale, the sheer scale, but the
mhm.
detail is yeah, Peter
shooting
Jackson absolutely owned that.
shooting on set, or
Mhm.
on location, shooting
Yep.
like all the movies back to back.
Yep.
Like these people just lived together for like a decade or whatever,
Mhm.
and that all worked out. And then using their own, using Wetaworks for
Yes.
they were acclaimed for visuals. And ILM really had the stranglehold on visual effects. Industrial Light and Magic, created by George
Right.
Lucas and stuff. That's been was huge and still is like the go-to. But with Lord of the Rings, there's this other company that comes along, Wetaworks, that showed that hey, we can really make spectacular practical and digital effects as well.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I mean,
um,
kind of going back and watching the original trilogy, I honestly can't, in the original movies, find a place where they fell down on any of it. The Hobbit trilogy is a whole different animal that I think we should talk about, but the original films, I think the blend of effects and also, like, the actual costumes, makeup, everything is spectacular. Like, the effects, everything just works well. There's nothing that's really, like, out of place or kind of sticks
Yep.
out like a sore thumb and is just like, "Ooh, only wish, if they'd gotten this thing right, it would have been better."
Right.
Like, I was just watching the
Yeah.
extended edition of course, Return of the King to close up the trilogy, and a character that we don't get to see in the one, the Mouth of Sauron, is such a great blend of special effects and costume and makeup, and, it's just, like, a fabulous character that I
Hmm.
wish had somehow made it into the original film or the
Yep.
theatrical release.
That doesn't matter. The extended cut are the only ones worth watching.
They're the real version.
Yeah. Yep. I remember, I mean, I got these really like FYE or whatever, I got these really nice sets of the extended edition. They're
Mhm.
real fancy and thick and you can
Yep.
fold them all out and they have like the map and everything. And it's
Me
like
too.
it makes you miss the day of like physical media because
Yes.
those are all gorgeous and like all the behind the scenes content. It was just like piles and piles, and then there was multiple voice tracks, so I've watched them through different times with, like, the
Mhm.
hobbits giving their commentary and then different
Yeah.
different people, so you get a lot of fun insight there, and, I just remember that they would be on 2 discs because they were
Mhm.
so long, so I
Yes.
really treated them like 6 movies, you
Mhm.
know, and so I could never have enough because they were nice sized movies when you treat them as, per disc as 6.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just not a problem at all them being that long. So it's like,
Yeah.
if you had more content, please give it to me. It's one of the few movies that like I'm just like, yes, the more the better.
More.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, there was something really special about opening those up. You just felt like there was just a wealth in there. Like the from the outside, the cover looking so rich, and then like opening it up to find so many discs and so much
Yep.
content on them, you felt like you had your own little treasure hoard there.
Yep. I still have them though. I had like
I do
one of
too.
them, I forget. I think the 2 towers maybe is been torn. I don't know if
Oh
it happened during a
no.
move or something happened to that one,
Okay.
unfortunately. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I still got the theatrical releases and the extended, all of them. Chris has tried to get me to choose and I won't do it. I must have all.
Yeah. Um I mean, in terms of like perfect or complete or anything can change or whatever, I guess I do agree with the general consensus that The Return of the King has a lot of endings. There's a lot of endings there, a lot of
Yeah.
oh, it's over. Wait, no, it's not. Oh, it's over. It's not. But I don't know what other way to do it exactly. Like, I guess it's just those fade cuts that
Yeah,
just,
it is. I
is
will I will agree with you there. The fade cuts are very weird. There's nothing wrong with multiple endings because so many different characters have been on so many different journeys. Like, how do you just like wrap that up with one big,
yep.
scene or something? So I get it, but yeah, the fade cut and it's like a long cut. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that blackness just kind of like goes a tick too long where you
Yep.
think, and then yeah, no, here's another
Yep.
scene. Yeah.
Hmm. And then I guess, I've heard Peter Jackson talk about it before, how it's sort of adverse to um he's not a big fan of magic in a way. And so he kept his movies and his version of Gandalf and stuff very,
Oh, sure.
very muted and like down to earth, you
Mhm.
know? The- And like some of this is, I think, helps in the end. Like, there's a realism to these movies that there wouldn't have to be, elves aren't skipping and singing. They're
Mhm.
solemnly like floating and like it's this ethereal, like,
Yeah.
it's a different tone that I think is one of those situations where it feels so honest to the original content,
Mhm.
but is different. And though the one place I wish that maybe things would change a little bit, and clearly they decided to change it a little bit in The Hobbit, maybe, is the use and illustration of magic. Like, I always have a
Mm.
problem when The Hobbit, where does Gandalf really have to light pine cones on fire and throw them? They
Yeah.
just be fireballs? You know,
Yeah,
like
right.
it's that extra step to like avoid obvious magic. And though I like the a lot of stuff the way it's done, it keeps it Lord of the Rings always keeps Gandalf and the wizards like Obi-Wan, old Ben was when we first see him.
Mhm.
It's always mysterious. You're not sure of the extent of his power. And, it's a little,
Yeah.
and that's a great effect, but maybe it's a little too far.
Yeah, it's unfortunately, I think, a partially an effect of Tolkien's writing, because he doesn't give you a whole lot about the wizards, and that's very intentional, I think, because it's probably one of the elements that may be the weakest in terms of background. He gives you, the 5 wizards, he gives you their names, their colors, but doesn't really denote exactly what those colors mean in terms of, like, maybe like what we traditionally think of as like magical abilities or powers or whatever, you know what I
Right.
mean? Um, so and they're meant to be in the background. They're meant to be like these figures that sort of like watch over Middle Earth and like sort of live through its histories and learn. And they're very academic about things and they're not supposed to get involved. And then Gandalf just like can't help himself. He has to get in there. And so he's like an oddity among wizards. And I think Tolkien Tolkien had very specific ideas about him, but not necessarily about wizards. So that's something that is really difficult for anybody who's gonna, like Peter Jackson, who's gonna tackle his books and make them into films. It's like we really don't know all that much about the wizards like we know about the elves, like we know about the hobbits, like we know about the dwarves,
Yep.
like we know about men. It's a lot tougher. But I agree that I wish that there was a little bit more thought put into it by Jackson. If you're gonna make
Well,
the movie and you're gonna
yeah.
have to do these things, like be true to the material, but also don't sacrifice extreme realism for something like lighting pine cones on fire that now looks like sort of silly and mundane of Gandalf
Yep.
to do.
Right. Yep.
Because anybody could do
Because
that.
then moments later is like projecting this like black sphere of like energy against like the spirit of Sauron or something. And it's like that's awesome.
Right.
So
But then
um
yeah, he can't drive off like an orc pack or, like
yeah, right.
yeah.
Yep. But yeah, I do love the mystery there. Do you feel that what do you feel of the kind of Christian connections and stuff? Like, do you think that wizards are like the angels and demons of our life, generally not involving themselves in our daily affairs, but do affect us in some way or another? Or there's a
I
lot of talk about the Lord of the Rings being much like his friend C.S. Lewis, is
I
more
was gonna say, yeah.
obvious um, Christian connections, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I think a lot of his histories are not necessarily, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but if you read the Silmarillion, it's really hard not to look at that and see a different version of a Bible story where, there's like one God and he does, create lesser gods, um, which you could maybe see as like angels, but then he, like give um he like has Middle Earth and decides to populate it, and he like gives Earth, the race of elves first. Those are his first attempt, And then there's like a dark presence of his brother who like takes some of like the elves who are afraid of this creator's light and twists them into darkness, sort of like a whole like Adam and Eve and like,
Hmm.
tempted away into the darkness. And there's this whole like, I see it there for sure. Like a biblical element to that. And then like it sort of gets like a restart when the creator of on Middle Earth births the race of men as well, and we kind of had this whole like second wave of another attempt at like a biblical creation story. So I
Hmm.
definitely see it in his histories for sure. I'm not positive that it's as present in the original trilogy.
I mean, is Frodo not Jesus that has to die for
Yeah.
everyone's sins? Essentially, he goes to the Undying Lands in the end, and then his disciples, or his, like, I don't know, his saints, so you
Companions,
have your
yeah.
fellowship literally with them and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would buy that as like a very, a looser interpretation. Yeah, for sure. I just think like if we're talking like direct Bible stories, like I think the histories are a little bit closer to that. Um
Mm,
whereas like yes, I could definitely read uh the Lord of the Rings trilogy as with like Frodo as a Jesus like figure for sure, but I think it's just looser.
yep. Yeah, I mean, and I don't know what his thoughts are on that
I mean, you
exactly.
could you could also read
Um,
Gandalf, I think, as a Jesus figure if you wanted to, when you think about like his fall, battling the
mhm,
Balrog, and then he like falls into literally a tomb,
yep.
and then emerges several days later, reborn as like this pure white spirit of light.
But I don't see. I don't always think of it like, and maybe that was what the intent is. But I don't always think of it like, well, you know, it's a mirror of a biblical tale, so much as, well, we have biblical tales because of there's a set pattern of the way stories are told,
Yeah,
redemption stories and the stories of the hero
rebirth.
for that we've done forever, that is a very engaging, and one of those things that hits a person at their core, that even if you don't know why, like, it's
Hmm.
just so true to the way we understand justice and right and wrong, and how that's given in a story.
Hmm.
um but I don't know, I should listen to, I'm sure people have talked about, debated, or whatever. I just know that people have made the connections or whatever, and so I'm spitballing here. I haven't heard what they are and stuff, but
Sure.
yeah. Do. So that kind of segues into a category I had here: lessons of the stories, or importance of the stories.
Hmm.
Um, do you have thoughts there?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different lessons I think you can learn from the stories. So, I mean, to try and like sum up anyone's takeaway from something as epic as Lord of the Rings is difficult to do because I think there are a lot of like little takeaways. But I mean, for Tolkien himself, a lot of his recurring themes throughout the Lord of the Rings trilogy is really about um people who are undertaking these quests don't always want them. They're not like these, excited action seeking heroes who are like, I've lived my life just wanting to go on a quest. There are these people who just had the unfortunate luck to be born during a difficult time. A lot of the repeating dialogue in the books and a lot of the dialogue in the movies talks about, I wish such dark days should not be mine. I wish, I hadn't lived to see such times. I wish
Yep.
this choice wasn't upon me. Um, and it's really just about, people, these figures finding their courage to go on in the midst of, you didn't choose this time. It sucks that it's yours. Um, but you kind of have to go on and decide how you're going to deal with this momentous thing. Are you going to run away? Are you going to face it head on? What are your reasons for doing either? Like, are you going to face it because you have, like Frodo, you have loyal companions who are with you and encourage you and can carry you forward? Um, is it that, you're facing these things because of your own personal honor, or your own desire, um, to sort of like, you know, not feel a coward and not be like a shameful figure like Theoden. That he kind of has this whole like, this sucks. We're probably not going to win, but we're going to fight it anyway because I can't bear the shame of being a person who ran away from a fight. I can't bear the
Hmm.
shame of people thinking that of me. So it's a lot about, you don't always get to choose the time you live, but you can choose what you do about it. And, you know, even a person who doesn't want such burdens can turn out to be a hero.
Yep. No, that's well said. That was always one of my favorite moments in the films and quotes is when they're in the mines of Moria
Mhm.
in Fellowship of the Ring, and Gandalf is talking to Frodo, and they're looking at Gollum and stuff, like he's been following us and everything. And that's exactly what Frodo says: "Is I wish I didn't have to be here. This really sucks."
Mhm.
And Gandalf's response is, "That's not for us to decide. All that we can do is decide what to do with the time that's given to us."
Mhm.
And so, yeah, as a kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah, it's
recurring.
it's it's such an iconic moment, and Ian McKellen is just an actor with such amazing gravitas. He just like makes that moment so amazing. But I was just noticing as I was watching, the trilogy kind of back to back to back. Like I said, like Theoden has a quote in Two Towers, alas that such evil days should be mine. Um, he kind of has the same thing going on where he's
Yep.
like, God, I can't imagine like why this is happening. Why is this happening to me? So many of my forebears kind of lived through easier moments. Um,
Yep.
but that's unfortunately not my lot in life, and now I just have to pick how I respond.
Yep. And sort of the irony that Aragorn is the one that's there to, well, this is what you've got. You've got,
Yep.
you war is upon you.
Yeah.
And the irony then is though that Aragorn himself has to decide whether he's going to take up his mantle of
Yeah.
responsibility
Exactly.
as well. So,
Yeah. Exactly. He's quite good, I think, throughout the movie and encouraging others to, take courage and bear their responsibilities, but then he's gotta face his own moment, and he does, but it does take him a little bit longer.
yep. Yep. Let's see. Okay. Favorite book, favorite movie. We'll throw in favorite character because we got to ask again.
Yeah, so for me, if I'm cheating, I have to say the Silmarillion. I
That's not
just
cheating. Wow.
well, if it's not, picking out of the trilogy. If it's
Sure.
we're
Oh,
if we're saying favorite book out of Tolkien's like whole um you know, body of work, then the Silmarillion for sure. Favorite book is Return of the King. I love the way the book like wraps up the trilogy. It's got one of my favorite scenes, Eowyn killing the Witch King of Angmar. It's just like so iconic. I love like the entire like battles, the way they wrap up in that film or in that excuse me, in that book. So, what about you?
thanks. Well, I can only speak to what I know, and my favorite film
Okay.
is The Fellowship of the Ring, easily.
Same.
I
Same.
mean,
Hands
the thing
down.
is about the thing about The Fellowship of the Ring is it's such a complete, well-paced individual film.
Mhm.
Like it though clearly it's designed to continue on. It wouldn't have to. It is self-contained and awesome. The Two Towers used to be when I was originally saw them, my favorite probably, but I was wrong. Because it is not it's not a complete thing, you know? It
No,
is definitely
no.
the middle one.
Mhm.
And then Return of the
Although
King.
I
Good.
I said this in our comments, I don't think it gets enough love. Like, so many people, like, focus on The Fellowship and The Return of the King, and Two Towers really is a good movie in its own right. It's
Yes.
not its fault that it can't be standalone. Like,
Right.
it just can't. Like, there's just no way to make that movie be its own, self-contained, thing. But it
Yep.
really is good. Like,
Yep.
it's such a good movie, for what it has to do, what people consider, like, the boring parts of the trilogy, like, Frodo and Sam, like, slogging forward and going on their quest. Like, that's part of the point of their quest, is, like, it's not all fun and games and heroic adventures. Sometimes it's literally, like, you have to walk 3 miles or 4 miles through a swamp, and it
Yep.
sucks. But
Yep.
that's again a little bit of, I think, Tolkien's desire to work out his experience in the trenches of World War One. It's like, this isn't fun. This isn't like, we boys going gloriously off to war. Sometimes it's literally we just sat in a mud pit for
Yep.
weeks.
Yep. Yeah, no, I still think it's great. I love and we'll talk about that in a second too, but
Battle of
um
Helm's Deep.
the well, the music, I was gonna
Oh,
say,
okay.
the music that goes real sort of
Oh, yeah.
Celtic.
Mhm.
I love the added themes of I'm blanking on the place that we're introduced to.
Rohan?
Yeah, Rohan.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, themes associated with Rohan are really great. So that stood out to me. We're introduced to some fun new characters, and I always really liked the elf that came to the rescue at the end in Helm's Deep, and then
Haldir.
tragically dies.
Haldir Olorien.
So sad, but I liked him.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe he could live. No, he didn't. He
Yeah.
just didn't live.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he took a blow to the back of the head. I think he's down for the count.
Yep. Um, and then Return of the King is is very good. Though I guess if I'm talking about some flaws, I had an issue with how Aragorn could recruit this army. All of a sudden, here's this
Sure.
army to come storming in, and our battle can be won so
Mhm.
swiftly now. No, with this
Yeah.
unforeseen.
Yeah, it's something that is quite a bit less shocking in the books. You know what I mean? Like, it still happens. He still goes onto the mountain and he recruits this, like, army, um, kind of ghosts, spirits, whatever you may, that broke their promise to Isildur long ago. And he now recruits them to, like, go fight their battle. But it's not this, like, weird, like, we overrun the battlefield with spirits, and they kind of, like, pull things down and just, like, float around like these magical, soldiers that can just do anything for you. Um,
Hmm.
it's a little bit less in the books. But yeah, that's unfortunately like a hard thing that I'm not sure. I'm sure Peter Jackson tried, 20 different ways to figure out how to do this to make it look, you know, the most real as possible, but there's not a
Yeah,
great way. I don't know if this is the best way. I don't know if maybe somebody else could have had, like, a better idea, but yeah, it's not. I agree. It's a little convenient for this to just, like, magically happen,
I
where,
think.
Aragorn can recruit a secret army.
Yep. I think what needed to happen for that to be um better would be that we spent a lot of time watching Frodo and Samwise
Mhm.
in their struggles. We It seems relatively quick for Aragorn to get this. I think it needed to be
Yeah.
a greater struggle and
Yeah.
more time sunk into being able to achieve this goal, so we
Mhm.
could feel that as it was. the payoff needed to be so grand,
Yeah, yeah, unfortunately, that's m perhaps a movie pacing issue, um, because, we kind of, like, leave Aragorn where he's going to recruit this, king under the mountain, um, like, right at the eve of battle, and then, like, the next big thing is, like, we're in the battle. So we don't really get the, like, "Oh, this took some time," like, you know, Rohan had to, marshal their forces and, like, go to Gondor, and we see that, but we don't see the time it took because 'cause we're
Yep.
already, like, in the throes of battle in Gondor, and there's no sense of, like, how long this is actually taking. It's sort of like this weird, like, did this all happen in a day? Because that's what it seems like. There's no nighttime. We didn't, like,
Yep.
change time of day, so it just feels like it all happens within the same day.
Yep. I don't know. Still great, but one of my
Mhm.
complaints.
Yeah,
Um,
I wish that the Fellowship had won more awards. I felt like The
yes.
Return of the King won a lot of awards because I feel like the Academy sort of felt like this was a really momentous thing, and I think we might have let it slip us by, so we should probably, like, throw some awards at Return of the King. Um, when I think the awards are really probably more meant for, like, the entire trilogy, not
Right.
just specifically The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. It's like
That's
the
yeah.
whole thing, the whole shebang. Fair, because, like,
It's not right.
Return of the King gets the recorded wins, and I don't
Yeah.
think it's the strongest movie,
Yep.
but, like I said, I think the Academy was just sort of like, "Fuck." Like,
Yep.
"We totally missed this, gotta get on that train."
What did Gandalf say when he right before he let go and fell down to attack the Balrog?
"Fly, you fools.
Fly?
Fly." Yeah.
Fly, okay. All right. There's debate over that.
What's the
Some
debate?
say run, run, you fools.
Oh, like, books or movie? Because, like,
Movie.
movie is absolutely "Fly, you fools."
Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Um
Maybe our technical director is gonna, like,
d-
totally school me here and, like, look it up and find the clip, and it's gonna not be "Fly, you fools," but that's my very distinct impression.
I mean, it is that the idea that he's saying fly you fools is
Mhm.
go to the Eagles? I don't know.
That I
Right?
don't know. That's
I've heard
that's
that.
okay, that's interesting because, like, it seems like basically only Gandalf knows about the Eagles because, like, he's the only one that they, like, swoop in for. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Gandalf is always calling the Eagles to be like, "Hey, help us out." Like, Alan wrote for the army that, Aragorn is able to summon, Deus Ex Machina. Like, this army, like, just magically comes in and, like, cleans up the battlefield. I think the Eagles are the Deus Ex Machina. They just, like, come in 11th hour, like, swoop in, help out, do their thing, and then, like, "Cool, peace. Thank you.
Yep.
We had fun, like, joining you at the
Well,
very last minute, and now we're gonna, like, peace out."
and there's a YouTube video that I saw someone do that's, it's how it should have ended or whatever. And that's what they
Mhm.
do. And it was basically that, yeah, grab the ring with the Eagles, fly over Mount Doom, throw it in, done.
Yeah.
So
Can't do it.
so I want is this a blind spot? Is this a weakness in the story? Is this a is does this
So
get more to the point of like Gandalf he needs the world of men to rise if they're going to like continue forward and be reasonable stewards of Middle Earth? That they have to do this themselves? I mean, what do you think?
Which which they don't then, if that's the
Yeah,
case,
right,
because
right, yeah.
it's probably some hobbits.
Mhm.
But I mean, obviously the race of men is quite well represented in the fellowship as well. But no, I put out a theory. Chris was like half buying it, but also like
Okay.
there's some issues with it. So I was thinking that the Eagles could possibly have been very symbolic for Tolkien, in the sense of like we like in modern times at least are very aware that like the bald eagle represents America, the United States. Um and if he's really writing the Lord of the Rings as an allegory about his experiences in World War One, then the eagles come in late because America comes in late and just kind of like joins in all the action, like kind of like is on the sidelines and then like joins in all the action very late in the day, which they did. um I'm not saying like, gosh darn it, America, like, get your butt in gear. Like, why'd you join so late? That's not like, it's not a thought process in my mind of like, we should have done
It's
X or
like
we should have
a
done Y.
comment on it or not. Yeah, but
Yeah, it's literally just like we didn't enter World War One until I think very late 1917 or early 1918, and it ended in 1919. So, I mean, kind of
yep,
like perhaps his way of just sort of like writing his own experiences or writing a commentary or writing an allegory about America, kind of jumping
yep.
in a little bit late.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I mean, because it leaves it's that there's a lot of autonomy then to the
Mhm.
Eagles. Like it's not that you can't just, oh well, we're having our problems here, and so then therefore Eagles come take care of
Solve it.
this
Yeah,
kind
come
of
solve
thing. Yeah.
this.
It's like they have their own existence and whatever, and so
Right.
it leaves it on they're not just some tool, you
Right.
know, and that Gandalf can just persuade into doing whatever.
Right.
Even
Yeah,
if it is
they
simple or something, it's like not, involving them.
right, they certainly do help and will, um, which, is kind of like a sort of like, another nod to like diplomatic negotiation that like Gandalf as this like figurehead can, say like, hey, our ally, we need you for this specific purpose. Come on in. And,
Yeah,
that's another interesting facet to it. But yeah, it's they're not like this magical problem solver from the beginning. They can sort of swoop in at the end and they are a little bit of magical problem solvers at the end, but other people have also put in the hard work and they're not just like relying on the eagles.
right. Let's see. Sorry, I'm looking some up.
Sure.
Um, I never answered my well, anyways, I like your theory there.
Thank you.
Um, I never answered my favorite character.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know. That is really tough. I don't know about that. I really do like Elrond. I always liked him. I liked seeing
Do you
him
like
in the
I was gonna say, do you like book Elrond or do you like movie Elrond?
movie Elrond
Because like,
because
yeah,
Hugo
Hugo Weaving.
Weaving,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
mhm,
I do think there's some really great casting in the films.
yep.
Like there's just like Elrond, Hugo Weaving as Elrond is like a
Mhm.
dynamite choice. Absolutely excellent.
I'm always intrigued by the elves and some of the characters you know less about.
Mhm.
Celeborn, that's how you say his name. The elf, I
Celeborn.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that actor. And again, like basically nothing about him. He just looks cool. He's hanging
You
out with um
Galadriel.
what yeah, right.
Kate
So
Blanchett. Yeah, another
yeah.
dynamite casting choice. So
Hmm.
excellent. You do get to learn a lot more about him. I mean, not like it's not his like personal history or anything, but you do get to learn a lot more about him in the Silmarillion
Okay.
because Galadriel is so iconic. She's so powerful and so recognized within the elf world. I mean, she's one of the keepers of the three elven rings. So like her partner's got to
Yep.
be equally cool too, right? So yeah, you kind of got to learn a little bit more about him in the Silmarillion.
No, he just married up, and he just
Just knows
s-
she's
s-
so out of my
yeah,
league, you guys, but
yeah.
I got her.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. It's got something special that keeps her coming back. So that she's got the money and the job and the power.
In the ring,
So,
yeah.
yep. Hmm. Um, yeah, it's um I am always a big fan of ensemble stuff. That's
Mhm.
why I love X-Men and whatever. So Lord of the Rings, I love that we have we're in multiple places all the time. We're
Mhm.
going between not only then the hobbits and then the rest of the fellowship, but then you're going with later the fellowship, and then the hobbits are split into two, and then
Yep.
you're seeing Saruman and the Urukai, and you're getting the different, um um Arwen dealing with her father and stuff. It's like it's always different groups, and I like that a lot. So it's very difficult for me to choose. I suppose definitely watching the movies growing up, Legolas was probably my favorite in the moment because how many badass moments, right? Riding
Right?
down the steps on
Elephant.
the back of a shield, and
Riding
stuff.
down
And
the elephant trunk. Yeah, he does a lot of cool, like,
yeah,
surfing moves.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, he's got a lot of cool stuff going on. I mean, like, yeah, who didn't wanna, like, walk over snow or, like,
Yeah,
they're always like, "Hey, what do you see?" Like, "Go just, like, look at stuff and tell us what's
yep.
happening." So, yeah.
And what a breakaway for Andy Serkis. I
Yeah,
mean,
holy
after these
cow.
movies, not only was Gollum like a cultural thing, talking back and forth to himself, but then he had all the work in the world and, became it started the conversation. Can a
Mhm.
character that's not actually on screen, that's digitized, be nominated for Best Actor and all this stuff,
Right.
So that was a big deal.
Yeah, and I mean, in the case of Andy Serkis, I would absolutely support that because I mean, he was on screen even though he wasn't. I mean, he was
Yeah,
doing everything. That
it's
is like
motion capture, you
yeah,
know.
that is like the physical work you are doing and it's not only the physical work, but it's the expression that is being
Yep.
captured as well. So, yeah, absolutely.
The tough thing with that is obviously it can be manipulated, you know,
Yes. I agree.
but
But
what
I think for the amount of hours that he spent on that, like, clearly, they didn't just, like,
mm,
"Hey, do, like, 6 poses in one day, and then we're just gonna, like, manipulate, the rest of
yep,
everything." It was clear that he did everything.
yep. Alan brings up at least he was in the flashback as Schmeagol, and that's true. I
Yes.
always wondered if they like literally put him
Smeagol and Deagle.
in there so he could count as being
Yeah,
in the role,
sure. Or if he
for the
was just like,
award.
can I just, like, spend, like, 10 seconds on screen?" Like,
Yeah,
I would love to feel like I was just, like, me a part of this instead of,
yep, yep.
yeah.
It always made me sad watching the behind the scenes stuff that um because there's definitely some unsung heroes of these films. They hired a lot of dwarfs or little people to be
Mhm.
in the different roles for their back shots and all this stuff. We don't really generally know their names, but they're on
Mhm.
screen a lot. And
Mhm.
then you think of this fellowship that's together, and John Rice Davy, not John Rice,
Gimli?
am I
John
saying,
Rice Davies?
is that
Who are you
no?
thinking of?
Is that what it is? Okay. I
Are you
I always
thinking of
think of,
Gimli?
yes.
John Rice Davies, yeah.
Yeah, okay, okay. I always think I'm about to say the lead singer of Korn.
Oh,
That's Jonathan Davis. That's
okay.
Jonathan Davis.
I thought you were gonna say, like,
So,
Jonathan
yeah,
Rhys
okay.
Meyers or something, like, that is a totally different
Right.
person.
Yeah, right. No, because he's so good. Gimli is so
Yes.
amazing. But he's, like,
And
never with the
then
main people.
yeah.
He's never with the main people, and so he's always off with someone else, that we don't know, or he's by himself a lot. And I guess the prosthetics, he was so horribly allergic to them, so it was
Mhm.
just like painful for him to be in costume. It sounds like this decade long nightmare for him
Mhm.
that obviously doesn't show in the films because he's so
No.
great.
He's a
So
professional, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and then he also, played 2 characters. He's, the Ent. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name right now. Treebeard.
oh, Alan Sitchfield.
Treebeard.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah, so he's, working all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
if he's not, in prosthetics and I think a lot of his alone shots were a lot of like manipulating his height because it was
Yep.
more difficult to do, when he's standing next to the other characters.
Yep. And that was impressive for the way they, again, in this filmmaking. the way
Yeah.
they played with just perspective a lot to make
Mhm.
people look very different heights, and is incredibly well done. Definitely makes me want a Hobbit home. We've talked about that a lot, like building
Heck
a house in
yeah.
the side of a hill. You can actually go out west. Someone has it. You can rent that. They built a Hobbit home, the round door in a
Excellent.
hill,
Excellent.
and like it's removed from everything. They have like a little solar panel somewhere for like a little bit of basic something or another. But
Sure.
otherwise, yeah, you can rent it for a week or whatever and just,
Done.
live the Hobbit
Done.
life.
Done. I
Yep.
love it.
Just smoking pipe weed all day,
That's
drinking
right.
your ale and
Old Toby.
yep. I love the Hobbits' reactions when when they find food or, I love those moments. Um,
Tobacco or yeah,
yeah.
some ale.
I e- as I get older, I am greater and greater appreciation for hobbits and stuff. And ultimately, everybody wants to be the elf or whatever, but I end up just being I am just a dwarf or a hobbit, that's what it is. You know, I like
Yeah,
food and
it's
drink and
yeah, yeah. I think well, and I think those get a lot more like showcased in the Hobbit trilogy, like just enjoying yourself and like enjoying like Bilbo at the start is enjoying his very quiet life, but also like enjoying like the fruits of his own labors, like his stocked pantry, and he loves to have his tea, every day at 4
yep,
and stuff like that. Like he enjoys like the simple comforts of life.
yep,
And the dwarves clearly enjoy them too when they can get them because they're, on the road all the time. So they're thinking, my God, there's nothing better than sitting down to a feast and enjoying
yep.
the pleasures of life while you can. And that's not something you really
Um,
get from the elves because of course they're like a little bit too austere and ethereal to like
yeah,
enjoy it. Legolas
right,
gets close because of course he like has his like friendship with Gimli, and so
yep,
he's trying to like, okay, give and take, like I can be a little bit less, removed and
mhm,
try to enjoy myself and enjoy the things that you enjoy, like, we have our killing contest and we have our drinking contest and whatnot, and Gimli's like, yeah, maybe I
yep.
could like think about some things more too, be a little bit more open-minded.
Never trust a dwarf. And don't tell anybody. He grabs him by the beard. Oh,
Not
yeah,
the
there's a lot of good
beard.
moments. Yep.
Yep. Yep.
um, yeah. Okay, so epic question has always been a nerddom argument. Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter.
Lord of the Rings.
That's always okay.
Lord of the
You feel
Rings.
confident about that?
I do. I
All right,
do.
how's it go? How's 2 and 3 go?
That's a lot tougher. That's a lot tougher. I would probably good. It's so hard because like I can't help but think of them in different mediums. I'm so attached to the Harry Potter books and then more
Hmm.
like so attached to the Star Wars movies. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like so it's really hard for me to like compare and rank that when I think of them in different mediums.
Yep.
And not that I don't enjoy the Harry Potter film series, but if we were gonna straight up do like film series, it would absolutely be Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Harry Potter. When you introduce in other mediums, I'm having a hard time.
Interesting. Okay. I think objectively, if you're gonna try to be objective about it, Lord of the
Sure.
Rings is the winner.
Mhm.
Because, the achievement of those 3 films, in their entirety, the journey you feel like you've gone on when you go from the first one to the end of the last,
Mhm.
like, you do start to, like, reminisce about how far you've gone. You're
Mhm.
like, "Oh my god, look when we just were back at the Shire, helping avoid, celebrating a birthday and some of that, all the way to
Right.
here where, like, I can't I can't return to normal life. Like, I
Mhm.
can't do it, I've, like, been through too much,
Mhm.
I just can't rejoin that anymore, and good for everyone else, like, everything I did helped, in what will allow you to return to normal life. but I
Right.
can't do it. And it's like the impact that the films managed to have in conveying that, making you feel like you went on that journey as well in a way.
Mhm.
I think is something that the other films are not able to achieve. And the quality, the consistent quality of the um the writing and the acting
Mhm.
really kind of sets them apart. Harry Potter is obviously something very different. You start with children actors and stuff like that, and the films really evolve and change, and they have different directors and different composers, and like it's it's amazing in their own way what they managed to do, but
Mhm.
it still like does not reach the same heights. And then Star Wars is such, if we were originally talking the original trilogy,
Mhm.
to some people maybe that'd be a tougher question, but it's been so diluted over the years.
Mhm.
And on top of that, Star Wars, as much as it pulls from a lot of classic material, it does not have the depth of Lord of the Rings. I
Mhm.
mean, a lot of depth of Star Wars is added later and
Yep.
by others. The magic of Star Wars, honestly, it was all the content created by others and the inspiration that they, took from it and made this thing grow larger. But
Right.
the amazing thing with Tolkien is that he did it all. Like he
Mhm.
set up everything, and was um so thoughtful all by himself. So
Yeah, yeah. I think part of the magic of Lord of the Rings is its feeling of completeness, and containment, and it's very satisfying that way. Um, in the richness of the background that is there underlying the films, even as like you can see the background in the films themselves or in the original trilogy if you're talking about the books. um, I think the other two universes are just a little bit too fragmented to give you the same, like, satisfying feeling you know, of completion or um, like, this is contained. This is, like, the story we had to tell, and it was all here. Whereas, like you said with Harry Potter, like, you can feel the films evolving as they go, and it's really beautiful, but it also, like, is a bit fragmented and disjointed. Um, with the Star Wars films, like, or with the Star Wars universe, like, yeah, what do you consider, like, what are you considering when you want to compare them? Are you considering everything in the Star Wars universe? Are you considering, like, just the original trilogy of films, like the prequel and sequel? Do you want to consider, like, the standalones? Because then it does sort of, like, start to build out, and it's again less satisfying because you're trying to, like, have all of these different things housed under an umbrella, but there's so many different characters, so many different stories. You're never going to get that same feeling of, like, I've been with you, I'm invested in you, I have this emotional attachment, the way you have to, like, these Lord of the Rings characters that you're with the entire time, even when you're not with them.
yep. And that strength of Star Wars having all the extra content and stuff, as Alan points out, then becomes invalidated by Disney. So like it loses that.
Yeah.
And
It
I'm worried
undercuts
about,
itself. Yeah.
yeah, I'm worried, and we could talk about this too and circle back if we want or whatever, but like I'm worried about then the future of Lord of the Rings. The thing is, it's never going to take away greatness that was the original
Mhm.
Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's never going to take away from the books. It's never going to take away all these things, the amazing music that was written and everything. But
Oh, yeah, I love
um,
the music.
yeah, I mean, so music. I guess before we move on, we can talk about music because we haven't too
Sure.
much yet. Um, there are so many songs in there that, I mean, Howard Shore really did a number
Yeah.
with these scores, and I love the solo moments as well. A little bit of when you get Aragorn singing, you get Billy Boyd singing. I
Yeah.
mean, I sing that all the time. When he's
Yes.
like singing to the
Denethor, the
steward.
Steward of Gondor. Yep.
hmm And it's a great song, beautiful moment. One of the songs I really like that I think is emotional that is cut from the theatrical version is Eowyn singing when
Oh,
her
yeah.
brother is back and being
Oh,
buried.
yeah, her cousin Theodred. Yep.
Cousin, okay, yeah. And that's a great moment.
Mhm.
Sad. And then my favorite, it was one of my favorite songs ever is the ending song in The Two Towers.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It's so sad and melancholy. Like,
Yeah.
I hum that song all the time. Um, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, they really chose very haunting ending songs for each movie. I think The Fellowship, Enya's May It Be is a little more hopeful, and sort of,
Yep.
beautiful because the first movie, you kind of start out with hope even though like there's sadness there. Obviously, the fellowship sets out with such good intentions, and then they splinter by the end, and Boromir has
Mhm.
died, so they've already lost somebody. When you think of like the Two Towers, it's this like very melancholy, like we're in the middle, like everything sucks. Like,
Yep.
Frodo and Sam feel like they're getting nowhere, even though they are getting somewhere, but they're not getting anywhere good. They're possibly, being led by someone who's out to betray them. So they're not feeling happy about this. This is very burdensome. The rest of the fellowship is mired with battles upon battles upon battles, and everything is tough. And then we get to like Return of the King. um Annie Sullivan closes out the trilogy, and it's pure sad because everything's coming to an end, whether it's a physical end, it's a metaphorical end.
Yep.
It's yeah, it's all done now, and we're on the other side. We're crossing over.
Mhm.
Yeah, just absolutely beautiful. I have all of those. I play those on repeat all the time.
Yep.
Each ending song, I love each of them for such very different reasons. But also,
Mhm.
I have to talk about, I it's so stupid, but like in middle school, after the Fellowship of the Ring first came out, like the iconic moment where they're, like first walking the trail, and like the entire fellowship like is leading up to like walking over the peak of the hill, and they all like
Yep. Mhm.
cross over. And it's just that like grand, huge orchestral moment. I love it. I love it so much. I would just like repeat play that moment. It's just so like, oh, it's so purposeful, and it just like fills you with like, I should go do something. Like this is like epic, you know?
It's like
Yeah.
Gandalf touches the rock. Just, like,
Yeah.
touches the rock and boom,
And
explosion.
they're all just walking, like
Yep.
nothing's happening, but like you just feel it. You're just like, oh, we're on a
Mhm.
quest, you know?
Yep.
So just
It's
even moments like that are just like absolutely beautiful to me. And just like
yep.
make parts of the movie, 'cause you can see it in your mind.
There aren't many, um, composers, these days that are coming up with themes that are so memorable. Like, there's some things for me, like, I
Yeah.
hum and I'm always singing Lord of, Legend of Zelda songs.
Yeah.
Like a lot of classics there. Obviously, Star Wars is a lot. John Williams is known. He's got
Mhm.
Jaws and Jurassic Park and some of that.
Right.
Outside a lot of those like older films that he did and stuff, there is not a lot. But Lord of the Rings has several.
Mhm.
Just like The Hobbit, um, the Shire theme, the
Mhm.
Fellowship theme. Those things are really pretty iconic.
Yeah, the
And
theme for, the Riders of Rohan, they got this whole, like, Celtic moment, like, you can just, like,
yep,
hear that in your mind as well.
yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, Gollum song, that's the
Gollum
name of it
song.
there.
That's Thank you.
It's it just hits me in my core. Just
Mhm.
like speaks to me. So
All moody and broody.
yeah, I know. Yep. So we got Marilyn Manson, Madonna, and Gollum's song.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was
Yep.
waiting for another M there.
Oh shoot. Yeah. I'm sure there's an M song I like in there. Um, but yeah, so I think maybe last thing we should talk about, if
Mhm.
there, unless we think of something else yet, is the Amazon series and the future of Tolkien's work and the Lord of the Rings and all that.
Yes. So, obviously, being so attached, to Tolkien's world and to Lord of the Rings, I am incredibly nervous for this show. Are there things that give me hope? Absolutely. The fact that Amazon, um, bought the rights for this and, like, is spending so much money on each season. I think, like, the first season, they said something like 465 million to make it. I'm not sure that's exact figure, but I think it's close. Um, the fact that they're spending so much money on this hopefully means high production value and that things are going to look amazing. Um, we think I think we only have like one picture, and it's just like a broad brushstroke of like the universe that we're supposed to be in. It looked good, but it's one picture, so I can't tell a whole lot from there. But I'm still hopeful that good production value is going to come out of this. They've already ordered 2 seasons. So I think I'm glad that it's not gonna maybe just be like a one and done. Like they'll have a little bit of time to like play some things out, even though I think the initial deal says 5 seasons, but I don't know that that's absolutely guaranteed. So at least they have 2. Um, I like the fact that it is not going to be a Lord of the Rings direct remake or some sort of like spin-off of,
Yeah.
like this is the same time as, all of this is happening. No, forget the third age. We're going backwards into the second age with like the first, battle, the last alliance of men and elves, like that sort of time where like Sauron is just beginning, to come into Middle Earth and make his presence known. And we're going to be in that sort of like history that's more detailed in the Silmarillion rather than the Lord of the Rings. So
Sure.
I'm glad that we're not even trying to mess with the movies and that universe that's been
Mhm.
created. Um, but on the flip side, like knowing that there's such amazing quality films out there already sets the bar really high. So if you have anything
Yep.
short of the magic and the moments that these movies have achieved, like you're failing. And
Yeah.
it's not a low bar that you have to clear. It's a very, very high bar. And you have to meet it or exceed it.
Yep.
Absolutely. No question.
Well, I think that's definitely what the Hobbit trilogy ran into then as well. You
Ugh.
have it's um it's really it- I mean,
They could have
I'm
been
mad
so
about
much
the
better.
Hobbit. I'm mad about the Hobbit, and I haven't even seen the last part. I should have watched that for this or whatever, but it's really frustrating because whatever studio exec thought it was a good idea to take the shortest book aimed at the youngest audience and make it into 3
Mm,
movies and then release extended versions of them as
mm.
well just has no
Painful.
sense. There's no
So
sense there.
painful.
I'm sure they made money, but you damaged the brand,
You did. You
you
did.
know?
They were
It seems like they never seem to think about that. Like, you're gonna see diminishing returns here if
mhm.
you make foolish decisions now.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I can't unfortunately do anything other than agree. I mean, the The Hobbit was something that everybody started out knowing 3 movies was a mistake.
mhm,
But you had Peter Jackson signed on, however reluctantly, he was involved. At least you were like, okay, well, he made the Lord of the Rings, so maybe he can make something out of this. And to his credit, I think he did the best job that you could do with, stretching the content of one book into 3 movies, to use a metaphor straight from the master hobbit himself, Bilbo Baggins, like butter scraped over too much bread. Like,
Yeah.
you had all this good stuff and you just tried to spread it too thin too far, and it didn't work out. So, yeah, the first Hobbit movie was absolutely very promising, because I think it had the most from the original Hobbit book, and had the least amount of, like, veering off, and you could almost feel Peter Jackson just, like, holding on to that and just sort of being like, "Oh, I know we have to do these other things, so, like, I'll add them in here, but I really don't want to."
Hmm.
And then the other 2 movies were just like, I have to make this, so I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna do it, like, the best I can. I'm still gonna give you really great moments, but there's nothing I can do about these, like, you know, crammed in additions of, like, here's a whole subplot about Azog the Defiler, like, I guess I'm gonna follow him now, like, it's
Hmm.
it's just too much.
Yeah, if I remember too, there was some controversy when the first one came out because I think they shot it in a higher frame rate than normal. So people were going to see it and it's like, it looks so weird. It looks like a daytime television show. It looks so
Yeah,
clean and there's no blur. And it's like, yeah, I'm saying
they
48. Yeah, it might be instead of, your normal like 30, 32 of television, 30 frames a second on film or 24 even. So,
Yeah, and I think that for the first about half of the movie, you don't really notice it, and then it becomes really apparent in, like, the second half during, like, some of those night scenes where everything's just so pretty and it
mm,
doesn't look normal. It looks, like, glossy. You know what I mean? Like,
mhm.
everything looks sort of, like, weirdly shiny and, just not quite natural. Even, like, bodies and figures look, like, smooth in a way that doesn't look like actual people.
Yep. Yeah, it's a debate for another day, I suppose, because it's a hotly debated thing, like
Mhm.
frame rate, for film slash for video games and television and what
Sure.
that should be. But yeah, audiences didn't seem to respond well. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
anyways, yes, we could talk Lord of the Rings for a very long time. There's obviously a lot
Hours.
of content there. We could go into specifics on every movie. We almost should, like, if we get to a time where we're like we're not sure what we should talk about or something, we could always just like do individual movies or something like that as
Done.
well sometime. So
Any day,
you'll
anytime.
you'll just have to watch them again.
Oh, no. How terrible for me.
It that kind of was the last of my era of rewatching a lot of stuff over and over.
Mhm.
It was like Casino Royale and Lord of the Rings. It's like that. And then now I barely rewatch anything. Almost
Yeah.
never.
Yeah, it was actually really so enjoyable to go back and rewatch, like, have a moment where I was like, "I am going to rewatch things,"
Mhm.
because there is so much new that you just feel like you have to keep up with all the time, and you're just, like, plain interested in, and you're like, "Oh my god,
Yep.
I can never get to it all," so you're just constantly watching new things, and there's not that opportunity to go back and kind of, like, revisit something that you used to enjoy in the past, and it just reminded me, like you said, I used to rewatch these all the time. I got so bad that I could quote each movie line for line. I was the most annoying person you can imagine to rewatch these with, but I could do it. Now I can only do like the first one. Um,
Just because you can doesn't mean you have to.
I know, I know. I
But
so
it is
tried to
hard, isn't it? It
I
is
so tried to
difficult.
keep it in check, like, but there were just
Mhm.
some moments where I was just like, I'm so into it, and I would just like, say it
Yep.
along with. But yeah, it just really, like, this brought back that pleasure of rewatching something.
Yep. All right. Well, um, JR Tolkien,
I
one of
do
the greats.
I
Oh,
do
go
have
ahead.
to close out with like a cool thing just because I did visit a place in Oxford that
Oh,
J.R.R.
yeah.
Tolkien and C.S. Lewis frequented. It's a pub called the Eagle and Child. Um, and there you see like they've got like a whole little display on one of their walls dedicated to Tolkien and Lewis. And their friendship and their hours spent in that pub. And so there's me very seriously contemplating, but also raising my own glass to two of the greats. It was a really cool moment. I'm not gonna lie, just to like
Nice.
be in that space where they were.
For sure.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely a highlight, I think, of my travels and for the future. Alan mentioned this, but I absolutely have to at some point get to New Zealand to just like
Yeah.
do the whole
Do the whole
thing, like
tour.
do the
Yep.
whole tour, go to Hobbiton. Like I know it's
Yep.
commercial, whatever. I don't give a crap. Like I'm gonna go and I have to do it.
Yep. Yep. Sounds great.